Have you ever wondered what it's like to drive in a Latin American country? Do you know what kinds of dangers as well as advantages there are when driving around the cities of Ecuador? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about that, and at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a super tip that will help you when driving around Ecuador, so make sure to stay tuned till the end. So regardless of whether you drive a car or a motorcycle, you're going to experience the dangers as well as the advantages of driving in the streets of Ecuador no matter what. Though some people might argue that you're going to experience more of one than the other depending on which vehicle you drive, but that's not the point. The point is I wanted to clarify that what you guys are going to see is footage shot on my phone and recorded on my motorcycle because I drive a motorcycle, I don't drive a car. But I have friends who drive cars, and I made sure to ask them for their opinions and their thoughts about what are the dangers and advantages of driving in the streets of Ecuador, in the streets of Puerto Viejo specifically, but I also asked them for around parts of the country that they've been around, and I also have some friends who have been to the States. In order to give you guys the most quality and complete information, I had to make sure I had both examples, and I even made sure to record on a day of the week and a weekend in order for you to see the difference, as well as during the day and at night in order for you to see another difference and be able to have as much information as you need for whenever you decide to come down here. So I hope you enjoy it. We're gonna start off with the dangers first because I always follow the expression, let's save the best for last. So without further ado, let's get this started. So the first and probably biggest danger you're going to encounter while driving around a city in Ecuador is the fact that people have little to no respect for the rules of the road, which is absolutely terrible considering how many these actually encompass, that if I started talking about all of them now, we'd end up recording a documentary, which is actually not what I'm trying to do. So we're going to start off with people running red lights, which you know how dangerous that could be considering if people are in a rush and you run a red light and the other person is coming by, you're gonna end up crashing, you're gonna end up really sad and really hurt. So you really don't want that. And if you combine it with the second thing that we can see, which is going over the speed limit, which people do not respect at all, the speed limit is like a joke to everyone. So if you consider that and running a red light, could you imagine crashing into someone at top speed? And we're not talking about a highway, we're talking about inside the city, because people just don't care. People just drive as fast as they want because they want to get to where they want to go fast. And the police don't do anything about it, which we're going to talk about very soon. We also have stopping on pedestrian crossing. Whenever you drive, you know there's a certain point where you're supposed to stop so that way pedestrians can cross. But most people don't respect that. Some people are actually already on top of it, or like I said, they just go straight past the red light, which is not allowed. Don't think that just because this is Ecuador that that's fine. No, it is not. People just do it because no one cares. Then we continue with one of my biggest pet peeves, which is people not using their turn signals. Now, this is extraordinarily dangerous.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Because I actually had an experience with this before where I was actually driving behind someone and this was a normal road, two-way, and this person just randomly decided to do a U-turn. Like literally no turn signal, no nothing. They just, hey, U-turn. And I ended up crashing into him. And remember, I drive a motorcycle. So when I crashed into him, messed up my hand, very bloody, not a very happy person at that moment. And I still had to go back to work because I had gone out to get something to eat. And that was just a situation that I had to go through. Then we have the fact that people actually drive on sidewalks. This mostly happens with motorcycles, but you can see it with cars sometimes that are a little bit more rushed. But not like the whole car, because obviously that would just be Grand Theft Auto right there. And you know how that is. So basically you see people driving on sidewalks, basically almost you could say trying to run over people. Not really, that's not their purpose, but they just want to get to the front of the line first. They're just things that happen, and unfortunately they're parts of what make driving in the city super dangerous, because all of this happens in the city. I'm not talking about a highway, I'm not talking about the countryside, this is all inside the city. So the next problem you're going to come across, which is especially bad for people driving nice fancy cars or people who drive motorcycles and are extremely blind, which as you can tell, that is most definitely me, is the fact that there are streets that are very poorly built, or they just have tons of holes in them. There's no other way to explain this. They're literally craters in there. That's a better way to explain it. So basically you're driving around the city of anywhere. Puerto Viejo especially was like that a long time ago, but now it's less, but it's still there. You drive around the city and you will run across some holes that if you don't see them ahead of time, you're going to end up running into it, feeling very uncomfortable, possibly popping your tire if you went in too hard or if the hole was deep enough, which actually did happen to me once. And that was just terrible because I drove a motorcycle. The only good thing was the fact that I could push it, but that's not the point. I do not enjoy this, and there's nothing you can really do about it because it's not like in the States where you can actually sue the city and tell them, hey, I got into an accident because this happened. You can't do that here. The only way you could probably do that here is if the case were extreme enough where someone either dies or is severely injured, which we don't want it to reach that extreme ever. But that's probably the only way that this problem would actually be taken into consideration and the city would actually try to do something about what actually happened, which is not fair for anyone. And the last main danger we're going to talk about, before I bore you guys or before you guys think that all I do is talk about bad stuff, which that's not the case here, is the very poor organization, not to say atrocious, that there is on the streets of Ecuador. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is the fact that if you notice in the footage that you're gonna see here, there are cars actually parked on the streets, which if you go anywhere else, that's not allowed unless there's some kind of parking meter. And even then there's a specific time limit, but people actually park their vehicles for a very long time out on the streets. Why does this happen? Because most establishments are not forced to actually have a parking lot, which if you go anywhere else, most likely first world countries, you're supposed to have a parking lot before you can build a business or as part of the business because you need to be able to park your vehicle so you're not parking it in the middle of the road like you can see in this footage, which is god-awful because if it's bad enough to drive against people who are rushed, who are always going past the speed limit and trying to run red lights, could you imagine having to fight for spaces since there's so many cars or motorcycles parked on the side of the road? And I think we're all guilty of this over here because there's just no place to park. There's no option because most businesses, most places that you see, most stores, they do not have a parking lot unless you're a big store like, for example, Comisariato or Supermaxi, which I mentioned in my video before, or other stores like Aki, or even some better known businesses. Other than that, you don't see it. You just see a whole bunch of cars parked pretty much on the street, obstructing your path, which is absolutely horrible. And I'm getting very upset because it's not fair. It's not something that should happen, but it does happen. And these things cause accidents because sometimes some people will decide to be in their car, randomly fling their door open, and if you crash into them, you might actually be the one who gets in trouble. And sometimes people are just terrible in this way, where you're on a motorcycle, you crash into them and they will drive away. And this happens a lot on motorcycles, but we're not going to get into that too much. Just understand that's a disadvantage that I can tell you being on a motorcycle, a very big danger that I would recommend to be very cautious of if you ever decide to drive a motorcycle over here. And now with the bad stuff out of the way, we can actually move on to some actual good stuff, some advantages. Well, even though I call them advantages, I had to really think about them a lot and discuss them a lot with my friends. Let's start off with the first one. People can actually get around very quickly here in Ecuador. If you go back and think about all of the disadvantages, the fact that people run red lights, the fact that you have speed limits that are almost non-existent, you think about all that and you notice that it actually helps you get to wherever you want to go faster. You can run through cars like it's nothing. Like I do that on a motorcycle and I know I should not be proud of that. It's actually very convenient for me being on a motorcycle. I get to places probably 2 times faster, if not more, than a car would, especially considering that cars get stuck in traffic due to the situation with the cars that are actually parked in the middle of the street. But even with cars parked in the middle of the street, even with the traffic full, you drive on the sidewalk and it's just like, hey, you get to the front, you pass a red light, it's like nothing. And it's not a good thing, obviously, if you look at it in the sense of correct or incorrect. But if you look at it in the sense of an advantage, you actually get to places much faster and you don't have to worry about, being late or anything like that, even though people are always late, as you must have remembered by the Ecuadorian hour. But that's just the situation here. And my last very cringy and hard to accept advantage, I know, is the fact that the police don't stop you. Now, me and my friends came to an agreement with this one because it's an advantage looking at it from the sense that you don't have to stress out about having to pay fines or making it to places late because you can just speed and run red lights and get everywhere as fast as you want without worrying about the police being on top of you for it. But you clearly see the link with the disadvantages, and you think, but that's not good no matter what, because the police should be doing their job. And yes, they should. But unfortunately, here in Ecuador, sometimes they don't do their job. And if you notice police in the States, because I was in the States and my friend was too, police will stop you for things that you actually do. First of all, not like here where you get stopped just because the police want a little bit of cash out of you, which is unfortunate. It does happen, maybe not to everyone. I'm not saying this could happen to everyone. It's just something that might happen to you while you're driving the streets. You might have a faulty light. You might have gone a little bit over the speed limit, not like everyone else, and you'll get stopped for that. But you'll see people not wearing helmets. You'll see people doing much worse than you, and they're not getting stopped. In the States, you get stopped for what you do. In the States, you've got cops around every corner. Like, I remember when I was in the States, I literally saw a cop car parked in the grass, just waiting for someone to make a mistake. So there's just a big difference here. So what exactly can we take away from all of this? Well, if we look at the very extensive list of dangers and the very humble list of advantages, then you would probably just say, I don't want to drive here. Too many disadvantages, too many dangers. But then you'd put yourself at the mercy of other options that I don't want for you. Not all the time anyways. For example, one of these options is going in a taxi, which is fine, economic, fast, and most of the time good drivers. But they're equally fast as the people you're trying to avoid, and they typically do the most bad things, like do not follow those rules that we talked about earlier. Then there's buses also, but it's the same situation, and with buses, when they turn, they tilt. So, very dangerous. Your friends could take you, but if you go with your friends, I would argue that with your friends, you're also looking at people who most likely are crazy. So it's not always going to be that case, but you just might have that kind of luck. And I don't recommend it because you don't want to inconvenience them all the time. Then there's obviously walking and riding a bike. Unfortunately, riding a bike would be a great option, but there's nowhere on the street to actually ride your bike. You have to ride your bike on the street. If you want to ride your bike on the street, especially seeing the traffic here in Ecuador, I don't think so. And walking is just turtle slow, and unless you're taking in the sights, I don't recommend it because you want to get places fast. Now, if you want to go in a vehicle, if you want to drive a motorcycle or a car, I can give you a tip, which I think will work for either one, which has helped me in a motorcycle, so I'm guessing if it worked on my motorcycle, it'll definitely work on a car. Which is basically just follow the car or the vehicle that's always in front of you. That way you don't have to worry about something happening to you, since most likely that person will be the first person to take the hit. So it's unfortunate. I'm not saying I want them to get hurt, but it's a lot better if you wait, if you're patient, and you follow someone, because that way you can see the dangers that are coming up ahead. But if you're always in first, you're always trying to be in front, there's always a chance that someone's going crazy around you and something bad's gonna happen. Even if it's just a pedestrian just randomly going in the middle of the street, who's gonna have to swerve? You or the person in front of you. If there's no one in front of you, definitely you. So that's just my recommendation. It's completely up to you if you wanna follow it. And just one more thing, the world is crazy. I know you might say that Ecuador is not the worst place to drive, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's a very, very bad place sometimes, because of the way that people take things here. There's no seriousness in the road, so you never know when you're gonna come across someone who's just gonna want to drive like a maniac. And it might be useless to tell you all of this, because you might just say, oh, but over here it's worse. And I guess if it's worse, that means you're just coming over here and it's gonna be a very easy experience for you to drive. But I just want to make sure that you're safe. Aww. And I thought that this would be the best way to inform you, and I hope it helps. So that's it for today's video, you guys. If you enjoyed it or if you found it useful, go ahead and obliterate that like button. If you're new here or if you like content like this, then please hit that crimson red subscribe button. Also, if you guys like it when I talk about the motorcycle, driving around in a motorcycle, or heck, if you guys want to know about my first experiences on a motorcycle here in Ecuador, then please leave a comment down below. Let me know. If you liked the video, tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Also, if you guys have some disadvantages in your country that are much worse than mine, or if you guys consider mine to be extraordinarily bad, let me know in the comment section. Also, if any of the advantages seem good, let me know too, even though I think they're much too linked with the disadvantages, but to each their own. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys take care, drink water, go to sleep early, and I'll see you guys soon Much love. Ace out.